Hi, I'm Dr. Aliabadi. If you struggle with irregular cycles, acne, facial hair, body hair, hair loss, or insulin resistance, you might be dealing with PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome. Having dedicated my life to helping women with PCOS, I understand the challenges in getting an accurate diagnosis and the right care. That's why I created OV. OV is designed to help you take control of your health with clinically proven, validated ingredients in a simple, once-a-day solution. For too long, women with PCOS have had to choose between lifelong prescriptions or complicated supplement regimens. OV offers a better way to help manage your symptoms without the hassle. It's my mission to empower women facing PCOS and other hormonal issues by providing the information and support they need. Reclaim your health once and for all. Go to OV.com. That's OVII.com and start today.
On today's SheMD, we have Professor Sarah Berry. One of the things I'm so excited to dig into is that you have found through your studies that nutrition is way more personalized than we ever realized. And your work explores how our body responds uniquely to food based on factors like gut biome, genetics, and lifestyle. This is amazing. So can you kind of give me how you got there and now you're at Zoe?
Great, yeah. So I started by studying physiology as an undergraduate degree. And this was at a time, more than 25 years ago, where people weren't really talking about nutrition. During my PhD, I had the opportunity to run a randomized controlled trial where we were recruiting healthy humans, giving them different kinds of fats, looking at all sorts of different health outcomes related to cardiometabolic health. So as fascinated as I was by nutrition, it was running clinical trials that I really loved. And so this is where my life at Zoe has come in, that about 7 years ago, I joined a very small team who were starting out to look at this, what was back then a whole new, novel, exciting area of research called personalized nutrition. And this was based on this growing idea that actually we do all respond very differently to food. And so we embarked on this huge body of research called the PREDICT program of research, where we've now studied over 250,000 people. We're collecting data in a way that just hasn't been done in research before.
Are there both men and women in all of that, the new big one?
A mix of different ages, different sexes, different menopause status, different body composition, as much diversity as possible.
Okay, great. One of the things that has come out of this research is how meal timing influences metabolism and that nutritional labels don't tell the real story. Can you kind of dig into that?
Yeah, so I think it would be good to kind of step back to how we started out on this personalized nutrition journey. Was very much on the basis that, yes, we realized people responded differently. And we thought, actually, could we have a look at why they do? Is it their genetics? Is it their gut microbiome? Is it simply their age or their sex? What is it that matters? And therefore, can we deliver advice to people based on what it is that determines how you might respond differently? I'm perimenopausal, you might be premenopausal, or, we have different genetics. And I think what's been most fascinating about the research that we've done is because we've collected such a breadth of data, which is quite unusual in any human research. What we've done with our PREDICT program of research is taken a step back and looked at all the other features upon which we can personalise. So these are factors, not just your biology, but also how you eat. So the factors that you've mentioned, so for example, the time of day that you eat, how fast you eat your food, whether you've had a fasting period, how much sleep you've had, how that impacts your metabolic responses to food, how stressed you are, etc. And what we're finding with our research is that how you live your life plays a really important role in shaping how you metabolize food. And I think that's what's really exciting with the research that we're doing.
How did you get all the information to come up with all this?
So we use all remote clinical testing. We have these Tasso devices that click onto the side of the arm, take a small blood sample. People wear a continuous glucose monitor. We collect a stool sample in order to look at the gut microbiome composition. People use an app where they record everything from their hunger, their mood, their energy. They do photo logging. So every time they're eating something, they have the option to log what they're eating. They complete lots of questionnaires about their family history, their clinical status. We get that kind of breadth of information about who they are. And then we provide people with standardized test meals that are kind of like metabolic flex tests. So these are meals that are very high in fat and carbohydrate. They're not intended to be healthy, and they're intended to really kind of push the system. So we can look at how metabolically flexible an individual is. And what we do is after they've eaten it, we can monitor obviously from their glucose, monitor what's happening with their blood sugar, but we can also measure from the fat measures that we take in the post-meal phase. We can look at circulating fat levels.
Which fat levels do you look at?
For blood fat responses, we look at something called plasma triglycerides. What we know is that these post-meal responses, whether it's glucose, whether it's triglycerides, are underpinning many of the long-term effects that food have on our health. So in the short term, if you have excessive increase in circulating triglycerides from the fat in the meal, that can stimulate downstream inflammation. Now, this is all normal physiological response to eating. It's perfectly healthy to have peaks in glucose, peaks in blood fat, peaks in inflammation. But if it's repeated excessively, day after day, we know that that's linked to increased risk of metabolic diseases. But we're also collecting lots of information at the same time about how they're eating their food. So how many meals they're having a day? Are they snackers? How late are they eating their meals? How frequently are they eating late into the night? What's their kind of fast period? And then looking at how that relates to how they're metabolizing food, but also looking at how that relates to some of their health outcomes.
But for a long time, there was the food pyramid that, hadn't been updated until 2011, and they moved it to the food plate. And so we're told a lot as consumers what to do, but you actually did the research, does it matter if you put a carb and a protein together?
So I think one of the most exciting findings from our research is being able to, in one study, look at all of the pieces of the puzzle. And that enabled us to look at how it's actually a lot more important than just thinking about the food that we're eating, but thinking about how we're eating as well. For example, we found that eating rate was really important. So by eating rate, we just mean how fast you're eating your food. And people are eating their food generally too fast. And what we found was that if you're eating your food really fast, you have poorer metabolic health, you have bigger blood sugar spikes. People who are fast eaters tend to be more overweight compared to people who are slow eaters. What the research shows is if you just slow it down by 20%, you'll reduce your calorie intake by about 15%. So if you are trying to maintain a healthy weight, or if you're trying to lose weight.
Well, that totally makes sense because you're shoveling it in.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't even have time to tell you that it's full.
Yes.
Because you're eating so fast.
So what's happening is it's not getting to the lower part of your gut where all of your fullness signals are in time to tell you you're full. It's also causing these big peaks if it's rich in carbohydrate and blood sugar that then you have a crash later, then you go on to eat more food. Other things that we found as well related to how you eat your food is that the time of day that you're eating your food is really important. And we found that 35% of people snacking after 9 o'clock, it's associated with poorer metabolic health. It's associated with higher inflammation, worse blood cholesterol, higher waist circumference, higher BMI, and so forth.
So how many hours should you wait before you go to bed after eating?
What we found with our research is that if you can try and stop eating by 8 o'clock in the evening, that was associated with more favorable health outcomes.
What do you guys recommend? What did you see for fasting?
We did a study called the Big If study, the Big Intermittent Fasting study. We had 150,000 people and we said, just try and reduce your eating window, so the period in which you're eating, to 10 hours. So that means having 14 hours where you're not eating anything. Because we want it to be, realistic to how people live their lives. We want it to be sustainable. And we found just by reducing the eating window down to 10 hours, and in the US and UK, typically we eat over a 12.5 to 13-hour period. So it's only changing it by a few hours. There were significant improvements in mood, in energy, and body weight. People doing it earlier in the day had even greater benefits. And we see this as well from tightly controlled clinical studies.
Like if I have breakfast at 8:30 and I'm done with my dinner by 6:30 in the evening, that's a very good.
Doable, yeah.
Doable. It's doable. I can have my breakfast. I can have my lunch. I can have my early dinner, but then stop snacking.
Yep.
One thing I do, I always go upstairs and brush my teeth. Because if I brush my teeth, then I'm not going to eat.
That's a really good idea. I love that idea.
So I have a scientific question.
Yep.
Is it all more favorable because you just aren't eating as much food because you've cut it down?
Yep.
Or is there something going on physiologically in your body that fasting does?
So that's a really interesting question. It's something that scientists are looking into now. What the evidence shows is that a natural byproduct of time-restricted eating is that you reduce your calorie intake. And so the more restrictive you are in terms of the number of hours, the less calories people tend to consume. And so with that has all the other benefits for a number of reasons, we believe. One is because we know our body and every cell in our body has its own little clock. We call this circadian biology. And so if we're eating really late at night, we're eating out of sync with our body clock. We need to give these clocks a rest overnight.
Is there any research that says, hey, when you're in menopause and premenopause, you should be eating differently or you should be fasting differently in the different stages of your life?
With our time-restricted eating study that we did find that many peri- and postmenopausal women said that actually it really improved their mood, it really improved their hunger levels. Many postmenopausal women, because of how estrogen affects all of the receptors in our brain, often report feeling more hungry in the peri- and postmenopausal phase. I don't know if other studies have specifically looked at peri and post.
It's a fact that women, as they go through menopause and they get closer to menopause, they become more insulin resistant. So that's when, with the drop in the estrogen level, with becoming more insulin resistant, your weight, everything becomes more challenging.
And one thing that when I was researching with you, it says fats and health and the misunderstood science of cholesterol. Can you tell us what you learned from these studies about that and why you think that is? I mean, we hear fat's good, fat's bad, don't do fat, only, it's like, what is good?
I think there's basic healthy eating principles that we all know will benefit us. We all need more fibre. 90% of people don't get enough fibre. We'll all benefit from having more fruits, vegetables, pulses in our diet. We'll all benefit from only having a moderate amount of red meat. We'll all benefit from reducing our ultra-processed food intake. We would all benefit from reducing our free sugar intake, moderating our salt intake, some more than others. If you're salt sensitive, you have a greater benefit, etc. What our research, though, shows is that within that, or rather on top of that, there's room for optimization. So we can talk about, all of these like small little changes you can make, but actually the majority of the people
don't follow the basics.
Aren't following the basics.
And I think I want to add, every time you talk about longevity, besides the food you eat, the number one factor is exercise, which most people don't. Number two is sleep.
Yep.
Sleeping at least 7 hours per night is very important for cardiovascular protection, for dementia protection. And then you go into, saunas and supplements and everything else. But I think at its core, it's nutrition, exercise, and sleep. It's not one secret solution for everyone.
When I hear personalized medicine, is that, oh, good. My blood is going to tell me exactly, that I don't need to eat carbs and that I don't need to eat protein. Where do you find the right information that says, okay, is it 10% should be grains?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things to pick up on there. I think lots of people are overcomplicating things.
Right.
The foundation of a healthy diet is simple. It's about getting the fiber, getting the whole foods into your diet. It's about thinking holistically. So there's 3 or 4 pillars to health, in my opinion. And I think we need to think about them all together and not over-focus on one. Sleep, physical activity, the food that you eat, and stress. Now, stress is very difficult to control. Sleep can be difficult to control, but you can do things, to control. Physical activity is under control. Diet is under your control for most people. But these all interact. How physically active you are, when you do exercise, how much you exercise, that impacts how you metabolize food. Your sleep, independent of all the other amazing things that sleep does for our body, impacts our food choices. So if you have a poor night's sleep, the reward centers in your brain become heightened and it drives you to crave like a quick fix, sugary, pastries or things for breakfast. And so it starts you off on this roller coaster. We also know, again, from our own research, if you've had a poor night's sleep compared to a day when you've had a good night's sleep, your post-meal responses in terms of glucose are worse. But I think that there has to be balance in life.
I had a nutritionist, I'm totally not kidding. I had a nutritionist tell me, and my children, only eat meat. Eggs in the morning, beef jerky for snack, a steak for lunch, a steak for dinner. This is a nutritionist that told me that. Now my brain went, no, this is not. But he was somebody that's, people listen to. It used to be that people looked at the food pyramid and said, oh, let me try to eat this, this, and this. But is that outdated?
Yeah, so I think it's really difficult because there's so much misinformation out there. There's all of your carnivore bros, as we call them, out there telling people just to eat meat, eggs, etc. And it becomes almost cult-like. And I think it's a real problem.
But you are a scientist. You have done trials.
Yep.
What did you learn that you can tell somebody that can't afford to go see a dietitian in the United States? What are the basic things that you learned about what we should be eating?
So I think the really basic principles are boring and simple. You should be aiming for half of your plate to always be full of those plant-based, unprocessed foods. So vegetables there, beans, those kind of things. The other quarter of your plate could be some sort of whole grain. So whether it's whole grain rice, quinoa, that sort of thing. And then the other quarter could be your protein source. It could be meat-based, non-meat-based, depending on your personal choice. But also within that plate, and this is a growing area of understanding for us as scientists, how important it is to have a diversity. And so I think what people need to be careful is not to just focus on, oh, here's one health food, I'm going to have that every day.
I do that.
Have the diversity, because the diversity brings different fibers. It brings different bioactives, the pigmented part of many fruits and vegetables. They all have different types of polyphenols. They feed different gut species, which are really important for our health. So we often say eat the rainbow. Now you can't do that within one meal, but if over the week you can try and eat the rainbow, so you're getting that diversity of foods as well. And as a rule of thumb, what we often say is try and get about 30 different types of plant-based foods, so that diversity of plant-based foods. So that's kind of the starting point. I'm really reluctant to ever focus on what you should take away from your plate, but the reality is we're eating too much ultra-processed food. Try and limit food that doesn't look like the food it originally came from. Many of these ultra-processed foods, as well as having the food structure totally changed, which we know negatively impacts our health. It's got all additives and emulsifiers that we don't yet know how they impact our health. So the biggest single thing people can do is go back to eating foods in their original state. But it's hard to do. So many families.
And it's expensive.
It's more expensive. There's studies done that have shown that on average there's a 50% price difference between an unprocessed meal versus the equivalent ultra-processed meal. That's huge. And
That's
for people, who are looking after their budget. But also there's so many households now that are two working families. My husband and I both work full time. When I get home and I've got to feed the kids, I haven't got the time to start from scratch. But actually, if I can educate myself how to cook from scratch, there are simple things you can do.
There was also a lot of your research in snacking.
Yes.
So what did you find about snacking? Is it good? Is it bad? I love snacking.
So I think snacking is another way that people can actually improve their diet. And so if we're thinking about easy tips that we can give to people, snacking is something that most of us do. But what's really good about snacking is for most of us, it's under our own self-control. So what I have for dinner is dictated by maybe what my husband's cooking or what my fussy kids will eat. But I can choose my own snacks. And so whilst it accounts for a lot of our energy, it's under our self-control. And we've done a number of studies looking at snacking. Firstly, to answer the question is snacking itself bad for us? And what we found from that was that as long as you were snacking on healthy foods, it didn't matter if you were eating at quite regular intervals. What became critical, though, was this late night eating that we've discussed, that if you were snacking after 8 or 9 in the evening, it was bad for your health. And so the take-home message from that research is that snacking per se isn't the problem.
It's what you eat
It's
and
what
when.
you're eating and when you're eating. But also you can use snacking to improve the healthfulness of your diet. What we found was that those who were snacking on the almonds had significant improvements in terms of their blood vessel function using this particular dynamic measure that we use. It equated to a 30% lower risk of cardiovascular disease compared to people snacking on the typical snacks.
So it's really not about the frequency of having little meals, having big meals. It's what you're putting in your body.
It's what you're putting in. And I think what that study really nicely shows is that the power of just one change.
Right.
And, you know, it's so difficult to change our diet. But actually, if we can communicate to people, wow, that equated to a 30% reduction in disease risk, that hopefully would motivate people to make that change.
Do you think gut health is the key to disease prevention?
So I think that we're starting to understand more and more how important gut health is. We're starting to understand how important our gut microbiome is. I don't think it's the only factor. I do need to caveat that this isn't my main area of expertise. It's something we've been looking at a lot with the work that we've been doing at Zoe. And we do see every time we look at associations between different exposures or factors that there's this really strong link between our gut microbiome, so the composition of all the bugs in our gut, and all of our different health outcomes that we're looking at. So I do think it has a really important role to play. It's a really exciting area of research, and we're going to learn more and more over the next 10 years. I'm a cautious academic scientist, so I'm like, yes, it's exciting. Yes, there's loads of problems. Yes, we're seeing that it's really, really important. But my gosh, there's still so much that we need to learn about it.
Do you think people should take a probiotic or a prebiotic?
I think that we know that prebiotics, which basically are the food that the gut microbiome feed on, I think there's very good evidence to show that prebiotics, whether it's like polyphenols, fibers, etc., that's going to have a beneficial effect on the microbiome. And there are studies showing that therefore it has beneficial effect on certain health parameters. With probiotics, we've still got a lot more to learn. Based on the evidence that we have so far, there seems to be a lot of promise for how they improve different health outcomes. But what we don't know is how one strain versus another strain improves health outcomes. And I think in general, there's certainly no harm in taking probiotics. I think in general, yes, there is a benefit in taking them. But in terms of specific strains, I don't think we know enough yet.
So I know you studied menopause and diet, and there was the largest ever study on how nutrition impacts menopause symptoms. What are some things that you can do with food to alleviate menopause symptoms? And what did you find that you were kind of flabbergasted about?
Yeah, so this is some really exciting research that came out of the big PREDICT program of research, where we were able to dive into subgroups of people. We looked at a couple of factors related to menopause. One, we looked at health factors. So we often talk about symptoms, the menopause symptoms, but actually many different health parameters change when you become peri and postmenopausal. And so what we found was that postmenopausal women compared to premenopausal women had much higher blood cholesterol, had higher levels of inflammation, had worse blood pressure, etc. But we also found that their postprandial responses to foods were quite different.
What is postprandial?
So postprandial meaning their post-meal responses, the very short-term changes that occur in circulating metabolites. So what we found was that postmenopausal women had much higher blood sugar responses to a standardized meal compared to a pre-menopausal woman. And that was quite an interesting finding. And because we had such a big group of individuals, we were able in our analysis to do something called age matching. Because menopause is an age-related event, it's really difficult to know, well, is what you're seeing due to the fact that you're just getting older? And so this was something that we were able to do in our analysis in order to see, well, what's the effect of estrogen loss, which is what happens in menopause. And we see that you have these differences in how you process food based on your menopause status independent to age. And then we did a whole body of research looking at menopause symptoms and looking at the prevalence of the symptoms, but also how they relate to diet. And this was a huge study in 70,000 women. And what was really interesting from that was when we asked people about their symptoms, we found that symptoms that we, certainly in the UK, we don't typically talk about in terms of menopause. So when we think about menopause, we typically think about hot flushes, night sweats. They were the least common symptoms. And yet we found that 85% of women were having brain fog, anxiety, low mood, depression, memory loss. That's phenomenal. 85% of perimenopausal women. We found that 99% of perimenopausal women had at least one symptom. 66% reported 12 or more symptoms. 85% of people having poor sleep. And we then looked at, were any of these symptoms associated with diet, and can diet alleviate any of these symptoms? And so what we did is we followed people over a period of time who joined our Zoe program, which is a personalised nutrition program. And what we found was that if you looked at people's menopause symptoms at the end of the 12 weeks, where they'd made these big changes to their diet versus at the beginning, they had about a 35% reduction in symptoms.
And just by doing what?
So this was by following a personalised nutrition program, but basically increasing the amount of unprocessed foods, vegetables, fibre, fermented food, all of the things that we know are gut friendly, improve our gut microbiome, but we know are good for our health. And actually, they didn't make huge dietary changes in order to see this effect. It's really important to caveat that we didn't have a control arm. It wasn't a randomized control trial. We were just following people over a period of 12 weeks. And you do see in these kind of studies where people are self-reporting that if you're monitoring them, they do tend to report slightly lower values, but not to the level of 35%. Yeah. And what was interesting is we also looked at this according to whether people were on HRT or not, so whether they're on hormone replacement therapy. And we found that regardless of whether you were on HRT or not, you still had a benefit from improving your diet.
That's amazing. I mean, food is medicine. We've learned this. This is so interesting. And some of this is so simple. And what you're really saying is eat the rainbow, try to have more vegetables than fats, and try to have,
less of the animal
products, not very much alcohol. You have a snack that's just all vegetables, somehow just try to get all that rainbow in. Is there anything else that you were shocked about? Was there anything else that you were like, wow, this is insane? I mean, I know that the menopause stuff blew your mind, that they could change it that much with nutrition.
Yeah, I think the thing that shocked me most is becoming aware of the miscommunication. Actually, I've joined Instagram, which not many academics do. And it blows my mind just how much polarization there is, how much bad information there is. So things like fats you talked about earlier, there's still this misinformation about fat raises cholesterol. It doesn't. Saturated fat, and only some saturated fat raises cholesterol. Dairy raises cholesterol. Well, actually it doesn't. Only some dairy. Fermented dairy like cheese and yogurt doesn't seem to raise cholesterol, yet butter does raise cholesterol. There's so much out there. Seed oils. I talk a lot about seed oils. I've done a lot of research on seed oils. I'm very positive on seed oils. I believe that they're healthy for us. And I've gone on quite prominent podcasts talking about the health benefits of seed oils in the last few weeks. And I am getting trolled like anything because of that, because there is a big movement, particularly in the US, to go seed oil free, to return to beef tallow, based on very poor evidence, based on animal evidence, based on, cell culture evidence, not based on human RCTs. And this is what worries me, is I speak to people who are like, oh no, I've got rid of all the seed oil from my diet. And it's like, oh my God, what are you eating instead? And they're eating these animal fats that are going to just shoot their cholesterol out.
What kind of seed oils do you think that you can have?
So typically the most common seed oils that are consumed in the UK and US are your rapeseed oil, you call it canola here, soybean oil, sunflower seed oil we have a lot of in the UK, and you do as well here. And the evidence shows, the randomized control trials consistently show that there are no harmful effects of these seed oils, and if anything there's a beneficial effect, that they significantly lower your cholesterol, particularly your LDL cholesterol, your ApoB levels, because they have a particular type of fat in it called omega-6 fat, that they can lower inflammation, or certainly don't raise inflammation. There are people that are talking about seed oils in a very negative way, because as seed oil intake has increased over the last 50 years, so has many chronic diseases, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity. But just because that happens to be at the same time as seed oil intake increasing doesn't mean that's causal, that the seed oil intake is causing those. They also talk about these mechanistic pathways, that are these theoretical pathways related to how the fats in seed oils increase inflammation. I won't bore you with all the detail of that, but these arguments are quite flawed, but they sound quite clever. When you listen to it on Instagram, they sound really clever. One thing I would say is that 60% on average of the seed oils that we're consuming are coming from heavily processed unhealthy foods, so are in ultra-processed foods. That's a problem.
So how do you know the right ones from the wrong ones?
The evidence, in my opinion, the human randomized control trials consistently show they don't have an unfavorable effect on our health. I think that we need to think about food as a whole. And so what we know is that, yes, a large proportion of the seed oils are being eaten in the ultra-processed food, but it's not the seed oils that are causing the problem. It's the ultra-processed foods and all the fact that the food structures change, it's got all this other crap in it, high in salt, high in sugar, low in fibre. That's where we need to take a food-first approach and think of the food, but not try and demonize a single ingredient.
Right. It's again the magic bullet. Take out seed oils and you're going to be healthy. Where is there science-backed, doctor-approved information for women that's digestible?
So I go always to the original research studies, but that's not digestible for everyone. So at Zoe, we do have a podcast. It's called the Zoe Science and Nutrition Podcast. I'm on many of those episodes, or Professor Tim Spector, who also is the scientific co-founder at Zoe, on those episodes. We only have evidence-based research active scientists on that podcast. So I would say that's a really good source. We make sure that there are very actionable, take-home, easy-to-do things for listeners. There's also many university websites. So Harvard, for example, I know have great resources that are really easy to understand with actionable advice that are written by research active scientists. In the UK, we have lots of resources. We have, for example, the British Nutrition Foundation. I don't know if you have the equivalent here that has similar resources.
I think part of the problem is people get their information now on TikTok and Instagram. Yep. And it's good and it's bad, but when it comes to nutrition, I think you need to go to reputable sites, like you said, science-backed, physician-backed.
So I know you just joined Instagram, but we're going to link to your Instagram because you actually have done the trials and seen the information. What is your Instagram?
So it's Dr. Sarah Berry. So Dr. Sarah Berry.
Okay, great. I just really appreciate you coming. It's so confusing. There is so much bad information and people are they get on a food bandwagon. It's cultish. It's like you said, it's cultish.
Just go back to basics.
Yeah.
It's not that complicated. I think people want to make it complicated. Yeah. It's exactly my argument. If you're not exercising, not sleeping, stressed out, drinking alcohol and smoking, then there's so many other things you need to deal with before obsessing over your food. Yeah. Nutrition is important, but just do the basics. Everyone on this planet knows they need to eat more of the plant-based vegetables and fruits, less of the red meat. I think we're trying to cling on something to find a magic pill. There is no magic pill.
And I think as well, something really important for people to remember is food is there to be enjoyed. It's there to bring us pleasure. It's part of our culture. It's linked with our emotions. It's part of how we socialize. And I do worry in this quest that we've forgotten the beauty and the joy that food is.
That is true. I mean, sadly for me, I really enjoy a pepperoni pizza more than I do a green salad. So
think of what you can add rather than what you take away.
Okay, thank you so much for being here today. And we are going to tune in to listen to you on the Zoe podcast. And I'll try to look at the Harvard website. I might not be able to navigate that, but it'll be something that we'll look into too. But thank you so much for coming and so willing to sit down and talk to us about nutrition.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today on SheMD.
If you want to own your own health, a good place to start is by following us on social media at SheMD Podcast and by subscribing to our show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
For takeaways from today's episode, visit our website, shemdpodcast.com. We'll see you next time on SheMD.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for a physician's medical advice. You should regularly consult your medical provider in matters relating to your own health. Even though we share our honest beliefs on SheMD, some of the products and services we discuss may involve sponsorships or paid advertising.